everyone. Thanks for joining us. Tonight is April 13th, 2023, work session. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. No announcements. I make my announcements at the voting meeting. We have two items tonight to discuss. One is a financial update, and the other is to discuss capital projects going on in the town. We're actually going to start with a financial update because we have our highway superintendent tonight joining us, and I'm sure he wants to hear what's going on with certain things and have a discussion about the highway department and about finances. So we have our controller here, Mark Posniak. How are you tonight, sir?
Doing well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and you want to give us a little update on our finances?
Sure. So just looking back at our 2022 numbers and then looking forward at some decisions that we want to consider. So looking back at 2022, it was a good year. I've rounded these numbers. General fund had a surplus, so the revenues exceeded the expenditures by about $2.1 million, almost $2.2 million. That's a fantastic result. And that increased the general fund balance to $11,100,000, roughly. Highway fund basically broke even. They had a very small deficit, and their fund balance adjusted to $574,000, so a combined fund balance of $11 million, almost $700,000. This is just a fund balance trend. Looking back to 2009, where we were just under $6 million, to the present, where we're just under $12 million. One thing to note here is that from 2009 to 2014, we lost about $5 million in fund balance. That was due primarily to economic conditions and other circumstances. We had mortgage taxes decreased by about $1 million a year. We had a new sales tax contract with the county during that period. We lost about $300,000 or $400,000 in sales tax per year. We had stock market conditions that affected the pension contribution. So our pension costs almost doubled during that period. And all those things contributed to the graph that you see right there, which is a reduction in fund balance. Our alternative would have been to spike property taxes to make up for the gap. But at that point, we had a sufficient fund balance, and we were able to draw it down. And then, as market conditions improved, we were able to maintain conservative spending. So as the revenues reappeared, that basically went to build fund balance back up to where you see it today. The current market conditions kind of remind me of those market conditions back from 2008 and 2010. I think our current housing market is likely to contract, affecting our mortgage tax revenues. I think the stock market is likely to decline, affecting the cost of our pension. And there's, ironically enough, or coincidentally enough, another sales tax amendment, which will reduce our sales tax revenues in the years to come.
So in just saying that, I just want to make a few comments. We are at a historic high of our fund balance, and generally, as the comptroller has discussed, that is primarily due to one-time revenues. The town board has been excellent with our economic development policy and plans, and because of that, we have a lot of one-time revenues, meaning these companies coming in, paying building permit fees and other fees. Also, our sales tax. As the comptroller discussed, we have a new sales tax agreement with the county, which includes no longer having a growth payment. The growth payment, and that's why we have such a substantial savings this year, because we had a tremendous growth in the last 2 quarters of 2022, and in that in turn turn shows a larger growth payment to each municipality for the county. Well, with the new sales tax agreement with the county, that goes away. So that, in conjunction with our mortgage tax decline, sales tax declining, and potentially not as many one-time revenues, is the reason why we're possibly going to have to be using fund balance in the future, possibly to offset tax increases, and that's what it's for. Just as the controller discussed, in the years past, we used those dollars to make sure we didn't have to increase taxes, and that's why we save and keep a good amount of savings in our fund balance. So thank you.
Thank you.
So Mark, before you go on, the new formulation for sales tax, do you have an idea how much we'll be losing in revenue?
No, because we have no idea what the sales tax will be.
Based on whatever we were trending before?
We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think.
Would you say a couple hundred thousand?
Yeah, at least,
If not $500,000.
if not more. Yeah. It is hard to say because there are multiple things that are going to influence that number, but yes, it's likely to go down. It's likely to go down by an amount that we're going to feel.
And I just want to explain that to the residents at home. The sales tax agreement with the county is with Dutchess County and the two cities. Contractually and in the Dutchess County Charter, it does not specify that each municipality has a say as to what the contract is. They make an agreement, Dutchess County and the two cities, and based upon that, they come to an agreement, and whatever allotment they agree that is going to be dispersed to the rest of the municipalities, the towns and the villages, that's the amount that gets distributed based upon population. So based upon this new contract, we're possibly looking at a loss of revenue, for sure a loss of revenue, unless sales tax are going to skyrocket to rebound that number, but
Right.
we don't know.
So this is just looking at a couple of key general fund revenues over the last several years. Starting with property taxes, we've kept them as low as possible. The increases you see there from 2019 to 2023 represent about a 1.4% increase year on year. In fact, from 2021 through 2023, it decreased each of those 2 years. For sales tax, I'm just highlighting the significant increase there, which is what helped build this fund balance. We went from $2 million in 2019 to $2.9 million, almost $3 million in 2022. So that is a big contributor to our surplus. Building permits, we have a lot of development happening, and that development results in building permit fees. We've seen a significant increase in those, but that's not likely to last. And the sales tax is not going to last at those numbers. And mortgage taxes, $934,000 was a pretty standard number for the entire 2010s. We ranged between $800,000 and $950,000 for those 10 years. Then there was a dramatic increase 2020 and 2021, and then in 2022 you saw it go back down again, and I'm projecting in 2023 further declines back down to what I would call a more normalized rate in the $800,000 and $900,000 for the foreseeable future. And a summary of those three highlighted shows that from 2019 to 2021, there's about $3 million per year increase in those three revenue lines. And then if you look at franchise fees, that's the third line item down. That you see a progressively negative trend. And I don't see that changing. I think cable franchise fees, this is Cablevision fees, are based on actual cable subscriptions. It doesn't include internet service. And those subscriptions are trending down and will continue to trend down as people move to various streaming apps primarily, or just not watching TV. So the point of this is to show how we were able to generate these surpluses. We kept expenses pretty flat, and while we kept them flat, we had these spikes in revenues. But I believe that a lot of these revenues will return to a more normalized number in the coming years. So what to do with the surplus that we do have? At the end of 2022, we had approximately 11.7 combined fund balance, 11.7 million. We've already allocated 2 million of that to the highway paving reserve. Our ideal fund balance is approximately $8 million. That's based on 35% of our overall budget of roughly $23 million. Consideration, so that would leave us potentially with $1.7 million, and the types of things the board may consider. Highway equipment is in dire need of
We'll get into that in a minute, yeah.
we have a Veterans Park that we want to, turn into something nice for the community across the street. That's going to require some funding. We're going to want to consider offsetting these future declines in revenues. We could put some more money into the paving reserve that we contributed the $2 million to. Or you could use some of that money to offset tax increases. The only concern I have with that particular option, I'm certainly in favor of reducing tax increases to zero if possible, but using this money to do that is dangerous because it's one-time revenue that is now having an ongoing effect in the future. So it's a bit of that would be my least the option I recommend least.
Right, so the example we give to the residents at home is that you never try to use your savings account to pay for your weekly grocery bill.
Yeah.
Because those are ongoing
exactly right.
operating expenses that we shouldn't be using for that.
It's not technically a one-time revenue, but it's substantially a one-time revenue, or basically the equivalent of that. Should generally be used for one-time expenditures and not for ongoing expenditures.
And wouldn't it be too, Mark, going forward, as these new economic redevelopment projects start to come online, that will give you some assistance in keeping the tax rate stable?
Right.
Because
We have other means of keeping the tax rate low.
Because they will be paying a share
That's right.
of their share of property tax, and that is a growth for us.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important, the economic redevelopment, to expand that tax base.
100% agree with that's a sustainable way of reducing taxes. By having that growth, you have more people sharing in basically the same amount of costs. So.
Right, as we all know, our costs never decrease. The amount of money that the town spends to operate the town increases, just like our home budgets increase. So how do we keep the taxes as low as possible for the residents? We increase the pie that we're collecting it from. Because if we don't increase that, then we're just collecting more from the people who are in that pie already. But if we add people, add businesses, add industrial companies to the pie, they're picking up the slack, not the current residents. So I like to, again, always as I do, thank the town board for the steadfastness with our economic development plans, because this is what it's about. This is how we got to this point. Being smart, increasing our industrial base, and bringing more tax payers to the pie. So thank you.
I also want to add that we've also, throughout the years, every year we find a way to decrease some sort of spending and consolidate and see which way where and what department we can save. And that goes a long way as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
We always like shared services, that's for sure.
Over the years, the town board did go to in-house engineering, which saved us a tremendous, it was $500,000–600,000
Per year.
Per year, right.
as opposed to going out for consulting services all the time.
Yep. That's all. I love you guys. And
We're not big spenders.
and it's true that actually holding costs steady is really cutting costs, because of inflation is affecting all of our expenses. So by keeping them roughly steady over the last 10 years, that's really cost cutting on an annual basis. Okay, so the only other thing I'll point out is on this was just showing the ideal fund balance. So I said 8 million, which I think is the best best number for us to target. But really, it's a range of about, 5.75 to 8 million. But knowing that we're entering an uncertain time, I would recommend that we keep it as close to the high end of that range as
I
possible.
agree with that.
Yeah, so would I.
We have to predict what's around the corner.
No, we don't, nobody has a crystal ball, so. All right,
Okay,
thank
that's
you.
it.
Thank you, Mark. Comments or questions for the board? From the board? I do want to make a mention, our liaison to the highway, Councilman Arco, has been very busy, and he has been doing his job as liaison to the highway, and he did a full evaluation of all the equipment at our highway department. It's very heavy. It's a big report. He did also provide me with some analysis on other items at the highway department, and I'd like to thank him. It's a lot of work. He did it all on his own, and but in saying that, it shows that we do have to spend possibly some money in the highway department. We have been discussing this with the highway superintendent and the councilman. And Councilman, would you like to make a few comments?
Sure. Highway supervisor and I, or superintendent and I have been working for the past few months on evaluating all our current fleet of trucks. We haven't gotten into the equipment part. A lot of our equipment you can have long-term because it's not used as often. It's not used for 365 days a year, but our 10-wheel trucks, our 6-wheel trucks, the plow trucks, and so on and so forth are used quite a bit. And we're working on a program to establish what end of life on these vehicles are so that we can start planning for budgetary reasons to make sure we have enough funds in their equipment budgets to start swapping out vehicles. And that's something that we spoke about today. We're in a kind of a catch-up mode. We need to catch up with some of our vehicles because they're beyond end of life. The fact that we're using them beyond end of life is actually a bonus to the town because we haven't replaced them yet. So we don't have that expenditure, but we're at a point now where I think we need to start replacing some of our bigger trucks, our 10-wheel, 6-wheel salting trucks. Unfortunately, we're dealing with, the economy right now. It takes, anywhere from 6 months to a year to order a truck and actually get it here on time. So it's critical to have gotten this completed now because we want to be prepared for snow season at the end of this year and the beginning of next year. So we've already begun going out, soliciting prices, looking at state contracts, and trying to see the best way to reduce the town's cost to start replacing these vehicles.
Yes, we had long, lengthy discussions with the highway superintendent and the comptroller. And basically, we're at the point where we need to stabilize our vehicle fleet. We have to play catch up a little, as the councilman described. Potentially, that's the decision of the town board to say if we want to allocate some of those extra funds we have in fund balance to catch up on the equipment we do need. And like the councilman said, we have to make sure that safety is first for our employees and of course our residents. So we have to make sure that all the equipment is sound, and if it's past its useful life, we have to replace it. And there are some pieces of equipment that we cannot do without. We are currently looking at some grants for what's it called, a Vector truck?
Jet Vector.
Jet Vector truck, which that picks up all the leaves and dirt. What does that do?
It works in the, for the catch basins, the cleanouts of the catch basins. It also routers out any clogged pipes. It also helps with detection, like say we're doing a pipe replacement and we have an electric line or a gas line, we can vac out, locate the line, and then we can perform our work when we know where there's work. Or if we have a sign that has to be replaced, the post, and it's in an area of electric lines or a gas line, we just vac down, and then we can install the post without going in with an excavator or a backhoe and digging.
Right.
So it's used a lot. It's also used in our watershed, which we do have to keep that
We do have
area
a mandate
cleaned
from
out
New York
every
State,
year.
yes.
We have to make sure that's done. So
It costs a few dollars, doesn't it?
it's very expensive.
Yes, for the folks at home, this equipment is very, very costly. I mean, that truck that the highway superintendent is describing is upwards of $700,000 for one truck.
One truck.
And some of the 10-wheelers that need to be replaced, those are hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we need to play catch-up, stabilize our fleet, get some equipment where we could be in the safe mode of we have the working equipment, and then formalize a plan for our budgets to make sure that every year we're replacing, or every few years, whatever the time schedule will be. How old is that Vector
It's
truck?
a 2003.
2000, so 20 years old, it'll be 21 years old, and we spend a lot of money on maintenance on these vehicles.
Yes.
And, well, that's also a benefit. We have a large budget for maintenance.
Yes.
And when we do replace these and we keep them on a proper schedule, that budget will decrease as well. So
Absolutely.
Because we find a lot of trucks through auction, correct?
we have in the past.
We have.
We
We
do
may have to-
utilize auctions very much.
Unfortunately, some of the trucks that we're looking to replace now are not usually at the auctions, like a Jet Vector or a full-size 10-wheeler. Not often do we see them at the auctions.
The equipment is like an auction, like
Yeah.
the Great Hall.
Yeah.
You know, backhoe, that's where you find some good deals on the auction sites. When we're relying on these trucks to clear our roads, you almost don't want to take that risk getting it at an
No, that's understood, absolutely.
We did get 21 years, almost 21 years out of our current Jet Vac truck. And
With a
also-
lot of maintenance on
With
it.
a lot of maintenance, yes, and, you know, for
Now the motor is going on that.
on the back part for the vacuum end of
That
the truck.
sucks up everything, right?
So that Javac truck over there, last time I checked, you guys wanted to salvage the body of the truck because that was still in good condition.
Right. The
But
cab,
the
the
problem
cab, the
is
cab and the main motor of the, you know, the drivetrain of the truck is not in awful shape. It doesn't go in the salt like a lot of the other trucks, but the back motor, which when we're using it runs all the time, that is the, and the vac part where the, you know, the materials go in, that is the area where we are in dire need.
So we talked about taking the truck chassis and reintroducing it back into the fleet and utilizing it
Right.
with different.
Maybe
put a
making
dump
that
pack
in
on it. We could do a bunch of different things with it.
possible chipper truck.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's possible?
Yes.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, it's.
We're not gonna just
it's
let it-
more cost-effective
Yeah.
to keep it in the fleet because of the trade-in allowances they were giving us for that truck were unrealistic. So we sat and looked at the numbers, and we feel we can get another year, maybe 2 years out of that truck with maybe a dump back, or like you said, a chip truck.
Chip truck.
Which we need, you know, which we could use and still utilize it for, you know, for the trade-in value.
If we made that into a trip truck, the chips are a lot lighter. It would take a little workload off one of the 10-wheelers as well and free up one of our 10-wheelers also. So,
Well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Some of the other vehicles too, they've already started doing it where they're purchasing the equipment where we could utilize different apparatus on the back of the truck. So it could be a dump truck one day, it could be a flatbed with signs on it the next day, and so on.
sander, so on.
Yeah.
They're called switch and
Over
goes.
the years, we also switched from regular metal dump truck to stainless steel.
Which we have, yes.
Or other bodies which they don't corrode, so that's something that they've been working on. Do we have an idea of exactly how many trucks we're looking at?
We did
replace?
a pretty good analysis, which we have there, and you have a copy of it, I think, there.
How many do we have?
Right now, we've looked at, out of our 60 trucks that we have, 60 vehicles, 15 right now could be registered as historic vehicles. So,
So you
not
have a
saying we want to
museum.
replace all 15 right now, but we definitely need to, you know, start with our 10-wheelers, our Jet Vector, and a few of our plow trucks.
Yeah, I think, well, we have a few options. We We do have some dollars left in a bond that we took out, a highway bond. We renewed 2 years ago, I believe. We set aside 1.5 million for paving and 500,000 for equipment. I believe we used several hundred thousand already for equipment. We could use the rest of that, those dollars. We could also, we had a very good winter, thank God, so we could utilize some of those savings for the equipment. And then also, the board will decide if we want to use some of our fund balance. And maybe with the combination of everything, we could come to a point where we could get a few vehicles to maintain the crews that you use every day. You know, we can't replace everything, obviously.
I know that.
It's just impossible. It's not doable.
We have upgraded our loader, our grade all, and most of our small truck fleet has been upgraded in the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I remember
We have.
Councilman Marinaro when he
Yes,
was liaison.
he was a big help to me as well. Our
champion for
rollers,
you.
yep, that's for sure.
And now it's Councilman
We're here
Narco's
now
job.
because, you know, this is what we have to deal with.
Going back on the equipment, we all agree that some of this equipment needs to be replaced, but I know that we have another impending issue, is paving. And for years, we've been discussing paving. We really have to sit down all together, all of us, and probably, I understand the report, thank you for the report. It's a great thing to have, and it's documented, but we really need to decide which way to spend our dollars, because a lot of the roads are in bad shape.
Last year, we did do quite a bit of paving last year.
Well, I make a couple of
Record year for
suggestions over here, which I've suggested for a while. I think definitely, as far as the JEDVAC is concerned, we're looking at a grant, and that's been going on for 2 years. And the reason is that we do not have all the information available for the application of a grant. And that's due to the fact that the mapping.
We are mapping out.
So
the
I had suggested that we hire a company or somebody that could be doing the mapping, because we can't do it ourselves. Your men are busy
It's hard to get it all mapped out, yes.
spending $800,000 for the watershed, which the truck is needed mostly to supply water to New York City residents. It's also used for East Fishkill.
Oh, yes. It's used,
So we
it's a
should really
daily use machine.
consider putting a plan together and hire somebody. I don't know what it could
No,
cost.
we had a
College kid.
discussion. We can't have a college kid do that. We need somebody who's competent with the mapping and understands, and we discussed that. We do have a plan to finish those, the information we need for the grant, but we also discussed, we looked at the grant a little more thoroughly, and we're in a little bit of a pickle right now with that Vector truck. If we do apply for the grant for the East of Hudson, I'm sorry, right, East of Hudson, to qualify for that, that doesn't only have to be for the Vector truck. That could be for a 10-wheeler, that could be for other equipment as well that we desperately need as well. So if we found a $200,000 10-wheeler, possibly that grant would go to pay for a large portion of that. So with the Vector truck right now, they're looking at tens of thousands of dollars of repairs to be used. So I said, let's hold off on that. Let's look at possibly we could rent it for a little bit until we could see. Well, the lease or rental on that is $4,000 a day.
A day.
I couldn't believe it myself. $4,000 a day for that. So I says, okay, well, how much is this truck really used? Is this truck used only up in the East of Hudson? So the highway superintendent explained to me, gave me a lesson. You want to explain to all the residents at home what that's used for?
Kind of like what I said, we use it, every year we have to do the watershed area, or we'll get a fine. So we start with that, and then we go into Hillside Lake, and we do everything in Hillside Lake, and then then we just work our way through town with the catch basins, but it also like routers out, like I said before, routers out clogged pipes. It locates gas lines, electric lines, it puts in signposts, so it's very, it's used.
So besides the winter, they use it every
Unless the
day?
temperatures are below 30 degrees, we are using that machine.
Yeah. Now, the new truck has a heater on it.
Yes.
Now it can be used during weather under 32 degrees. So that truck could be running probably 350 days out of the year.
And another detail of the grant, though, the grant is a proportionate grant. So if there are, just for a number, if we have 1,000 catch basins in the town, and we only have 200 in the watershed,
20%.
the grant is only going to be 20% of the cost of that piece of equipment, because the grant money in the watershed area goes to all the communities that have land that's set aside. So
Understood.
the best you're hoping probably would be for $150,000 towards the $700,000 vehicle.
So if you said that if with this new vehicle, it has a heater, it can be used 350 days a year. So maybe for those extra 15 days a year, you could use it.
No, it's being maintained so that it lasts longer.
$7,000.
Yeah, $4,000 a day for the lease. I am astounded.
Yeah, we did.
So,
They actually went out for bid, we made phone calls, and it was basically $1 million a year for a driver and the truck.
So, we have fought tooth and nail to get the paving drainage budget up to 1.1 million a year. We have 1.5 million left in our grant for paving, and we also allocated $2 million last month into a paving reserve. So we have roughly almost $4.5 million for paving right now that we have at our disposal. So we have that, we have equipment to be replaced, and I'm happy that we didn't put more money into that reserve because we could only use it for the paving. We have a lot of different issues going on that we have to try to stretch whatever discretionary savings we have to use, but I think it has to be used for safety issues, to resolve safety issues.
Well, I used to work with, the liaison over there at the highway. I strongly pushed for a preventive maintenance program.
Yes.
I just want to suggest to the town supervisor that this program is extremely necessary because highway superintendent, they change from time to time. We have nothing written in stone. We have no document to follow for, let's say, if Kenny takes 6 months out, nobody knows exactly what has to be done after a snowstorm
Well,
for the longevity of the equipment.
my deputy in the program that...
I understand the deputy.
The program that you and I
Look,
started,
Kenny,
we have
what
in
I'm going
play.
with this is this. We've had issues in the past with this
No, I
department.
understand.
Okay? We've had $800,000 piece of equipment that was bought, hardly used. It was a paver at one time, and then sold for peanuts. These are big tax dollars that are wasted.
I agree.
And I'm not saying that this is happening right now, but I don't want to see this going on
I
in the future.
completely
So
agree.
if we're going to do this plan, and I got to spend the tax dollars, I want to see it in black and white, and I want responsibility of how this equipment is going to be preserved.
So-
Because, in the private, trucks, yeah, they don't last long.
Right.
But
So
the private takes good care of their equipment.
the program that you and I started with Russ Coat and protecting all the new trucks that we purchase and the frames getting taken care of, we still do that.
Right.
Still in play.
Excellent.
And if something ever did happen to me, my deputy, Tommy Knapp, is very knowledgeable. He's very knowledgeable on what needs to be done.
And also, the town controller and I had a discussion a week or two ago to examine establishing a central garage operation. This is a common element of large towns, and the central garage would not be part of the highway department. It would be, within the town government, and that would be charged with the maintenance and preventive care of all the vehicles. And however, there's initial startup cost there because there's excellent software available for keeping records on all the vehicles. But as we all know with software, there's an initial cost, so that's like $100,000 or more to get that set up, so that the mechanics then, when they do something to a vehicle, enter it into, remind you of when things have to be done. So we did start to talk about that to figure out what information has to be gathered to come to the board with, and that might be a path forward also, but it's
Options.
I don't know about it. It's going to save costs in that it's going to make the vehicles perhaps last longer, but the initial startup cost is an investment you have to decide.
But, Tom, I think that's very necessary. I understand the initial cost, and then the initial cost is going to be spread out through the years. But in the long run, just like with our own cars, sometimes you have your car company sending you a letter reminding you that your maintenance, you're approaching 50,000 miles, whatever. We need to have some kind of a program put together with this department.
But that might be something you want to allocate some of these funds that we're talking about, set it aside, you know.
Without a doubt.
As long as I'm there, we will definitely keep this program going, because I believe what we started is a great thing, keeping these frames cleaned off, getting them cleaned off every year. If they need touch-up, let's touch them up. Councilman Arco was there the other day. He saw us scaling down one of the frames that was rusted, and then we were reapplying some of the rust coat. So, the newer trucks, they are getting coated, they are getting protected, but keep in mind, some of these trucks that are 20 years old that have been in the salt, there's no saving some of those.
There's no,
We even got prices on doing complete frame restorations, and it's just not cost effective, unfortunately.
Right, well, we have to make sure that also the town's liability is as low as possible. We can't have faulty equipment.
It's a very good report that we prepared. Mainly Councilman Arco was really thorough on this report.
Yeah, very thorough, very thorough. I mean, I was very impressed. I was very taken back at the numbers. But that's me. I don't like to spend wherever I don't have to.
I know. We're very cautious.
Unfortunately, this is where we have to play a little catch-up, and the past is the past, but like you said, we need to make sure whatever dollars we are investing in the highway department is going to be a good investment and kept as long as possible. Hey, I mean, listen, for the most part, a lot of these vehicles are 20-plus years old.
They are.
We have done a good job maintaining them, or they wouldn't be lasting. They're being used every day, and it's big equipment, so...
The mechanics are always busy over there.
I just want to repeat what I just said before, that we can't just concentrate on the fleet. We also have to concentrate on paving roads.
Absolutely.
That's why I
They
just said we
said
have
that-
almost $5 million at our disposal right now.
Right.
For paving.
also understand some of those trucks are for paving.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I know that. Well,
The bigger
all of
trucks.
the big jobs, we usually bid them out.
And
do
sometimes
small jobs.
we do haul to
Right.
our contractors.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes we haul the asphalt to save money on the contract costs, so, and that is our equipment.
Those trucks are hauling 15 to 20 tons to the paver, sometimes 6 trips in a day.
So what is the time frame that we have to kind of come to a conclusion?
Well,
We're going to spend some of
right
this.
now, I have the councilman is looking at, and the highway superintendent, get some prices on some equipment. Like I discussed, possibly we can allocate some of the rest of the bond, some of our savings from the winter, and we, of course, have to then decide how much of the fund balance you want to allocate towards that. But I think we should, they're going to present to the board a plan of what we need right now just to stabilize our fleet. And then we can come up with another plan for a yearly maintenance, meaning buying new equipment, add to our equipment line that we have currently. Just just like we do for everything else in town. We have maintenance or reoccurring budget lines for our IT program, so then we're not buying 10 computers all at once. We're replacing them as we go, and that's how this should be for the equipment as well. We do the same with our police vehicles. So this should be no different. Unfortunately, over, the several decades, it was easy when there's financial hardship, instead of raising taxes or instead of doing taking from other lines, it was easier to take from the highway line. Is it right? Is it wrong? I'm not here to judge anybody, but that's what
catch-up time now.
that's what it was. Now we have to catch up. So it's our job. We're the elected officials now, and we have to make the hard decisions.
And a lot of these trucks, there's a group of trucks that were all bought at the same time. So they're all dying at the same time.
Right.
And their life is the same time. So it wasn't something that the superintendent and I and a comptroller were going to start working on, is how to flatten out that budget for equipment so that we're not spending everything 1 year and then we don't have any spending for 9 years, and then we're looking for more money 9 years from now. It's just kind of like a flat.
Right, that's why we had several bonds taken out that are coming due soon, and potentially we wait and use that money over a period of time instead of all at once. So that the future boards aren't into the situation like we are right now. Correct.
And also, the cost of these vehicles have gone up so much
Yes.
that
Substantial.
Within a year, they've gone up.
it's
Substantially.
mind-boggling.
Yes. I mean, like you said, when they, several years ago, when they looked to get this Vector truck, I believe it was about $550,000.
Exactly.
Now it's about $750,000. So it's just, the numbers are mind-boggling when you really think about it.
And also, just to be clear, when you say they're bringing prices, they're looking at piggybacking on to other contracts that have been competitively bid.
Yes.
In accordance with New York state law. They're not calling a dealer up.
Right.
to Find out what it is.
We're looking.
Right, exactly.
They're on state
So
contract.
that the public
Right, for those...
idea we're going around.
Yeah, for the residents at home, there's very strict purchasing rules that we have to adhere to when we are buying large equipment, and basically anything that's over $30,000, we have to have bids, if not our own. We piggyback state bids or county bids where they have already done the bid process. So sometimes that works to our advantage as well.
That's a huge cost savings right there.
Yes.
We're not doing the bid process ourselves.
Right.
Kenny, all the surrounding towns, they also have those jet vac trucks, like Wappinger, Fishkill.
Yes.
They all, LaGrange.
Yes.
And usually towns don't want to share them.
Yeah.
Well, if you're using it
Well,
every day, it's-
yeah, because if it breaks, who fixes it? Who's going to drive it? We've gone through this.
it's not something you're
we've been
using a
down
couple
that
times a
road.
year. yeah.
Right. Right.
But I think it's good that this money, you got to take the time to determine how to allocate it, so it's not all locked up into one spot.
Exactly. We have plans. We haven't had new park in town in many years. We've all discussed about our Veterans Memorial Park, which we are moving forward with the next phase of that, which is the architect. The architect phase. And we're going to have to also decide on how much to allocate towards the first phase of that project, which this is long overdue to have a proper Veterans Memorial Park for our veterans, and I think we all agree that that's very important to our community. So we'll have to decide on that once we get a little bit further down the road. But Councilman Arco, I'd like to thank you for helping out with this, and the Highway Superintendent, as usual.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I know you have to go. You're going to go see your mom, Mrs. Williams. Don't worry, I didn't keep him too long. He's on his way. Don't be so cheap. Buy her dinner or something, would you, Ken?
Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you. All right, next on our list is to discuss townwide capital projects. We have our town engineer with us, Mr. Bryan. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor.
How's it going?
Going well, and yourself?
Excellent, thanks.
Good.
You want us to give us a little overview of the capital projects going on?
Sure, so I believe all the board has a copy of a summary. I'm just going to kind of skim over all these items. If you have any questions, just stop me as we go, and I can get into it in a little more detail, in no particular order. I think the largest project we have ongoing right now is the roundabout at Patriot Way and 52. The plan as of right now is to complete that paving by the end of May. That's subject to approval from DOT for a temporary detour, because we'd like to close that circle if we could to, get the best paving job we can. There might be discussion of waiting till after school is done, so we're working into that now. So certainly it'll be done by this summer, hopefully by the end of May.
And I'd just like to mention to the folks at home, that whole entire project, that whole traffic mitigation project on Route 52, Patriot Way, the roundabout, the school drop-off was paid entirely by the companies in that area. We did a road improvement district, Amazon paid the bulk of it, and some of the other companies in those corporate parks helped pay the rest.
Including the school drop-off. Yes.
Including the school drop-off.
Right.
And the school also helped contribute.
Yes.
They did.
And is there any movement by the school to maybe next year mandate that be the drop-off, because it has helped traffic? I see many
Not to the
people-
full extent that it could.
Yeah,
I think some people are shying away because the construction's not complete, but that'll be done this summer, so hopefully they will
And after
ultimately close that entrance.
many discussions with the school superintendent, they didn't want to make it mandatory because they like to ease into these things, have the families and the parents not be mandated that they have to drop their children off there, give them a school year to digest it, learn how the road works there, but come next year, come September, not next year, September, that they're going to make it mandatory. If you're bringing your child to drop off at John Jay High School, it's going to be at the school drop off, so.
And it'll actually save the parents time.
Oh, a lot of
It's a quicker drop, for sure. People just have to get accustomed to it. The third item on the list was actually part of this road improvement areas to resurface the existing South Drive that goes through behind I-Park. That's part of our improvement area. And also this year, we are going to add some speed bumps on Patriot Way that was paved last year. Because, we just don't want speeding. It's a brand-new road with some nice flat straightaways, and we want to deter speeding on that road from people. So that's a project that'll take place this year as well. Then moving on, Carroll Drive Bridge, the long-awaited Carroll Drive Bridge. Our contracts were signed with OCS, our contractor. We are working on actually finalizing their construction plan. We've had meetings with them. I do want to say, just for as any neighbors at home listening, it's come to my attention that the contractor has been reaching out on their own to certain, neighbors. We have a plan in place that's been the same plan for more than a year. We can't tell the contractor not to reach out to homeowners to try to make whatever arrangements they may want to make with those homeowners. The means and methods are theirs, but the town is sticking to our plan, and if somebody knocks on your door and asks you for something, don't feel compelled to say yes. I mean, you can always call the town, but we've secured all the easements, all the right-of-ways, everything we need to build that project we have.
Yeah, we do have residents reached out. We are actually meeting with one of the residents next week. And a lot of residents do call, say, what's the status of this? And that's why I thought it was appropriate to do this capital projects update. But just so everybody knows, with the Carroll Drive Bridge, there was a delay. We did run into some trouble with funding. The project, when it was originally slated, was about $1 million less. Then after engineering and everything else, we had to come up with this extra $1 million. Well, how do you do that? That's a substantial amount of money. Dutchess County Planning and the DOT also, they have funding sources that helped us gain this extra $1 million from projects that weren't completed, that were on the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, and also, like I mentioned long ago, this was a grant, an 80-20 split, 20% the town's responsibility. And then we also applied for other grants that we did get approved for to cover 15% of the 20% that the town is responsible for. So really, out of the town coffers, we only have to worry about 5% of the cost of the project. But that did delay the project to find the extra revenue. But all in all, it's a very good project. We're only out of our pockets for 5%.
Correct. Moving on, Hillside Lake Road culvert replacement. That design work is underway right now at our consultant GPI, and that is scheduled right now for a June construction. June of '24, I'm sorry, June of '24.
And for everybody at home, that also was a grant that we got, $900,000 grant. And so some people saw that last year or several years ago, we did some work on that culvert. That was a temporary Band-Aid to that,
Yes,
correct?
yes. And another thing we are trying to accomplish as part of this project is to get the classification of the Hillside Lake Dam reduced so that we don't have to invest a lot of money into that dam.
Excellent.
So that's one of our objectives in this project.
Excellent.
The East Hook Crossroad Bridge replacement, we have a temporary bridge still in place up there. That, I mean, our engineer is, very busy with all these projects, but that is, currently under the initial design, but I'm pushing to have that project done in '24 as well.
And
That's the
those
bridge
costs
that
will
was-
be covered by FEMA?
By FEMA.
Oh, that will be another, very good. I'm sorry, I only worry about the costs, but it's, these are huge dollars.
Yeah,
if we
that's
have
at
to-
least a $3 million, $4 million bridge
Right.
up there, yeah.
If we'd have to come up with this money.
Yeah. We do have a grant secured for on Route 52 to complete our sidewalk network. That's probably, again, going to be a '24 project with the design going on this year. There might be a little right-of-way required, but we intend to fill in the gaps that still exist. There'll be a sidewalk extended to, not quite to Palin Road, but to a project, and that developer is going to contribute his share of that. It's a 80-20 match, that project, so he'll cover his 20% of that. We're going to go out to the soccer fields and complete that. And we're also going to put a sidewalk, at least that's our goal, right in front of Jay on that side. So the kids can cross the roundabout, walk, if they choose to walk to the main entrance of Jay, and not have to walk past Lake Drive, not have to walk past the gas station, the Dunkin' Donuts and all that stuff, so they can stay away from those entrances. So that's a project that's going to be underway. I know for many years, residents have complained about our entrance into Town Hall right here. So we do have probably a change order in the works right now with our paving company that did Hopewell North last year to make those improvements, right out front. So we're trying to nail that down. Another project the supervisors talked a lot about is the Route 376 and 82 roundabout that we received a $5 million grant for. I don't know, the supervisor's well-versed in this, what we're trying to accomplish here. Would you like to?
Yeah, well, we were approved for a CMAQ grant, which is a congestion reduction grant from New York State, $5 million. That would be a 20% contribution by the town for roughly $1 million as well. We did put 2 applications in for 2 sets of roundabouts. The first was for all on Route 82, right in the hamlet. One was at the first was for Unity in Trinca, and the second was at 376 and 82 by St. Columba, and the other by Frankie Superette. So after we put it as phase 1 and phase 2, phase 1 meaning on the strip Trinca and Unity, and the other 2 to be the second project to be done. Well, it came in, we got approved for the second project. So it's very difficult to do the second project when you really need the first one done, because of how the traffic modeling we have done to show how the cars will transform through the hamlet. It's not conducive to do the second project first. So we've had many different thoughts here. We're trying to not lose this grant. We really want to utilize it because this is decades old traffic problems in the hamlet. We have gone back to New York State and give them several different options, and also the cost of everything is so substantially higher that I don't think we could get 2 roundabouts done for $6 million. So we are possibly going to amend that, and hopefully it will be accepted. If not, then we have to go back to the drawing board and try to apply for the CMAQ for the first set of roundabouts.
Yeah, just to add to that, a new development since we started submitting for these grants is the fact that DOT may in fact remove the bridge over the railroad tracks.
Yes, thank you.
Which now created other opportunities, so we were taking a holistic approach to look at, okay, based on the bridge removal, what is best for the hamlet, and not box ourselves into a plan that's 2 or 3 years old, So that's taken a lot of time, and we're dealing with Metro North, and there's just a lot to it. But that said, we are trying to control the things within our control, okay, Metro North not being one of them. We are now just, at this point, at another meeting today, focus on the western intersection of 82 and 376, right here at the top of the road here. I saw a plan today that looks pretty good for that particular location. So I gave the directive to go ahead and try to move forward with that, contact the state, see if we can get a buy-in, but understand we're only going to build one roundabout. Only one roundabout.
Well, I don't think
See
we
if we're
have
going to
funding for two anyway.
and see if we can get a buy-in. We just don't really want to lock ourselves into a roundabout at that eastern intersection, because there's a lot more potential if the railroad bridge is removed to really open up the hamlet and further develop like that area of town. So hopefully this will be accepted, and if we were confident it'll come within that $5-6 million range.
Yeah, we've been working very closely with our traffic consultants, Hudson Valley Engineers. We did have a meeting on Monday with the town engineer, myself, Metro North, Department of Transportation, New York State Department of Transportation, and it's a real eye-opener to see how these large bureaucratic agencies operate. I'll leave it at that.
Large bureaucratic agencies, that's what
Yeah, it's very, very difficult, and when the town is the smallest player in the game there, it's hard to beat your chest and try to get any attention. So we're trying to get the best we can for the dollars that we got, and I really hope that they will accept this change of scope of work for the grant, because it took us a lot of work to get this grant approved. And obviously, they understand that this is a huge problem with traffic in our hamlet and that it needs to be addressed. We've been discussing this for many, many years, long before I'm supervisor, or even on the town board, that there's been traffic problems in the hamlet. And it's only going to get worse as the traffic count increases. We're almost approaching 20,000 cars per day, and at that time, when it does reach 20,000 cars a day, that middle lane will not operate correctly, and then we're going to have even larger problems. So my hat's off to our town engineer and his staff and our consultants, Hudson Valley. They've been doing a phenomenal job, but it's hard to get all the different players to agree to accept what we want to do. So
There'll be updates to come. We'll continue to discuss this, so. The last project that we've been working on for also a couple of years is the realignment. It's not on your list, I added it at the last moment, was that realignment of Phillips Road at 216. So I think that's been on the agenda. We're moving through SECR now on that, and we're also hopeful to get that out to bid this year as well.
Yeah, so for the folks at home, on Route 216 and Phillips Road, it's a very bad turn there, very bad curve. There's been several deaths over the years on that curve, and we've been trying to get a plan with the property owner on that corner that we could utilize that property to move the entrance of Phillips Road, what is that, south down on 216, closer to the
Yes, I would call it south,
south, so it would be much easier to make the right and left turn into Phillips Road and get away from that hairpin curve. Actually, I believe it was just last year, one of I think it was an engineer or a contractor who was doing a big project for the state, was on a motorcycle, died on that curve several years ago. Somebody else in a vehicle, and probably about 10 years ago as well. So
It's a bad curve.
very, very bad curve.
So we are trying to push and get that. We have a lot of projects in the works right now, a lot of things going on. And then I'll move on into the water and sewer projects. In no particular order, Four Corners, just to give everyone an update. We know we have a water emergency at Four Corners. We know we're on, as of right now, no irrigation. We've had meetings, with the HOA. I think we're reaching out right now to have another follow-up meeting to give them, updates. What we do know right now is well 5, which had been previously drilled and tested, and, we've determined a safe yield of about 60 gallons per minute. We do have a contractor now on board, signed, materials have been ordered. He's going to start running the connection, piping, wiring, et cetera, in July, and we hope to have that operational by the end of 2023. That in and of itself will not give us irrigation. Also at Four Corners, we have a well 4 rehab. Well 4 started to diminish its yield. We were starting to suck air. That's why we halted all irrigation, because we're down to 1 well. As it stands right now, we're on 1 well at Four Corners. So that project's been awarded. We hope to start that at the end of this month. That's going to take about 4 to 6 weeks to complete that. We have to get, of course, Board of Health approval on both these projects before we can go online. But this well has a stronger yield of, I think, more like 130 gallons per minute. And it's possible when we complete the well 4 rehab, and we also have well 5 connected, that we're hoping that maybe by the end of June that we can allow people to start irrigating maybe every 3rd day. But that would be about the limit, about every 3rd day.
But really, the domestic use is okay.
Domestic use is fine.
It's the watering
Yeah.
lawns.
Just so everyone understands, our demand jumps from 40,000 gallons a day to 300,000 gallons a day with irrigation
Because of watering their lawns.
because of watering the lawns.
Well, our concern, the town's concern, is not about them keeping their lawns green, unfortunately. It's to make sure that they have potable water. Absolutely.
And apparently, the irrigation is something that doesn't figure in with the health department when they approve systems, so that the water system has to be approved by the health department before it's built. But they only look at it for the domestic use and have, or at least at the time this system was approved, they didn't factor in anything for irrigation.
I don't believe this had anything factored in for irrigation. Hopewell Glen did have something irrigation, but it was grossly underestimated. And because irrigated projects in our town are new, some of the older ones do not have irrigation like this. Even the health department got caught off guard in terms of what the actual demands would be. Right. In other words, the guy came and says, okay, I need 100,000 gallons for irrigation. Okay, we'll sign off on 100,000 gallons, but you really need 300,000 gallons. There is no formula, there is no book that says for an acre of grass, in the Board of Health manual, this is how much water you need. Unlike a restaurant, for so many square feet, you need so many gallons, or office for so many but for lawns, and then people turn the switch on and just, leave it on. They want a nice, so it's something that we've talked about, in terms of, we've modified some of our regulations now about redundancy for wells, separate water lines, now that we're learning how problematic this could be. And I don't think that's the end of it. I think we'll be doing more to try to restrict irrigation. If you're connected to the Hudson River, like Hopewell Glen, fine. But, anybody with a well at home, you put an irrigation system, you're going to burn your well out.
But also, correct me if I'm wrong, the homes in Hopewell Glen have a separate system for the irrigation.
In part.
In part.
In part. Part of their water comes from the county through their potable line, and then part of their water comes from an on-site well field through a separate line. Okay, so whether it's about 50-50 or thereabouts,
Okay.
but they run off 2 sources.
But
they don't have a
Four
dedicated-
Corners,
They don't have a dedicated line for irrigation.
Four Corners is 100% off the potable line. There is no separate line whatsoever.
that's the problem.
I know there was some talk about in the future.
We've done that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, any new project, either there's going to be a restriction that you can't irrigate, or you have to have separate lines and a separate source. Yeah.
Because then you can shut it off when they're irrigating when they shouldn't be.
Right.
Right. We are also looking back at that well 1A. We have a couple consultants looking at possible filtration.
Was that the color?
The color, and the idea is we're trying to get our handle on what a budget might look like. And in order to do that, we have to do, there's going to be some science and some studies required just to get to that point to see whether or not it's even viable or not, but filtration.
So that well, the water's potable, But the coloration of it is...
Well, it's not potable as of yet because of the color.
color.
Right, yeah. But we've gone out to some different firms that have a little more expertise, and they're looking at that. There's going to be more sampling. It's a process. It's not a quick process, but, that was a 130-gallon-a-minute well that,
A great well.
we know it produces water. The question is, what's it going to cost to treat it?
Right.
That's the, and to maintain that treatment. It's the initial cost to put a system in, and then what's the maintenance cost once it's up and running to make sure, it's worthwhile. We also are continuing our well exploration program at Four Corners. We're really trying to exhaust everything. We met this week with WSP. They've identified 3 new on-site locations and 2 off-site locations for potential wells. So we're going to get that underway. We'll be meeting again with the HOA. We need to get a sign-off from them allowing us to drill on that reserved or the HOA-owned lands. I'm sure they'll cooperate, but we are still continuing to try to find more water sources at that location. And we're also at the same time looking for potential connections to other water systems like Montage and Summit Woods or, any other project that might have excess water. So that's it with Four Corners. Any questions on that for? No. Okay. Fishkill Plains Water, about 5 or 6 years ago or thereabouts, we rehabbed wells 1 and 2. I think we awarded it at one of our past meetings, but we are starting again this summer to do a rehab on those wells. We're going to take temporary feed from between the hamlet and Hopewell Glen while we do that rehab. We have a 3rd well at Fishkill Plains that we drilled at least 5 years ago. It's a good producer, but we have to put an expensive, filtration system in order to use that water. And at that time, we held off. Okay, but now, given where we are with water, with Cannon, just so everybody knows, when we connected Worley and Revere to the hamlet, or to Fishkill Plains, I should say, the health department approved that because we said we had source at Cannon to back that up.
Right.
So we're actually allocating hamlet water to Worley and to Revere. If we bring well 3 online, then we don't have to allocate hamlet water, and that frees up water, for other projects, whether it's Hopewell North or whatever. So we're at a junction now. We really need to get well 3 connected at Fishkill Plains. And with some modification to our piping, it could also give us the hamlet redundancy in the case if we have issues at the hamlet short term.
Right.
So it just makes all, again, the more we can improve our systems, the better off we're going to be when we run into problems. So that's Fishkill Plains. Beekman Country Club, the regional water source analysis, pump tests. We're trying to finalize all the details for the pump test. We want to get going before they start irrigating the golf course, which is going to be very soon. So we're hoping in the next month, certainly within the next month, we can start our pump test to see whether or not Beekman might be, a source of excess water for other districts. Hamlet and Cannon Water. So we are soliciting engineering proposals to do treatment on the 4 wells that we took offline, just to know for sure whether it's feasible and cost efficient. Those wells only produce something like 80 to 100 gallons per minute, so they're not strong producers,
And
but...
just to be clear, that's for the Hamlet wells, not Cannon wells.
Right, that's just for the Hamlet wells, right?
And that's because of a recent change in the measurement of PFAS.
Right. That's
Which
an
is-
emergent contaminant, a new contaminant.
Incredibly stringent in New York State. Did we get anything from the federal level yet? Because the federal level as well?
Yep. I think it's still like 2, right?
2 parts per trillion?
Yeah, maybe less than...
But right now, I think we're at 10 in New York State,
New York State's at 10.
and they're going to drop, yeah.
Well, so that means the federal government went from 70 to 2.
That's what they're proposing.
That's,
Right.
So then that would be the new baseline, too.
Well, the county would have to adopt it, yeah, the county. would have to
Federal law supersedes state law.
would we have anything that would be able to test something as low as 2? Because we may not have anything,
I think that's why that was the limit set.
because that would make just about everything bad. It would be so hard.
We get tests that come at 0, we have tests that come back at
Okay,
2,
so-
10, 13, 50, we have tests that come back all over. So,
That's a huge burden on on all towns.
So, we're evaluating that, but my guess is that could be $1 million filtration project, Now, alternatively, we find more water at Cannon, and drill more wells at Cannon, because we have a large piece over there. But, you got to understand, even at Four Corners, at any place, to drill a well just to see if you have water, you're at least $100,000, just to see if you got water. And then if you find water, you could be up to $500,000 to actually be able to use that water on a good day, depending on what kind of infrastructure you have. So this is not inexpensive. It's high stakes, so you can't just start popping holes all over the place, because it's $100,000 a pop. And then many times we have wetlands, and there's a DEC involved. It's difficult, but we are trying to see if there's a couple more spots across at the Cannon property that we could get some more wells, because we do have a great filtration system already. The iron and manganese filtration. We have a Guidi system over there, so we do want to utilize that to the greatest extent we can. So that's ongoing. Hopewell West. We're going to be doing some demolition of the existing Worley water plant, also the Revere and Breadview water plants are going to be demolished this year. We're going to start our meter installation this fall at Worley. That'll take a little time. Historically, that takes time to get into everyone's home and install meters. We still have between $1.5 and probably $2 million set aside for waterline replacement at Worley that we're trying to get that kind of kick-started. Okay, so there is more work to be done at Worley. Pinewood, we're preparing plans for a grant application. Pinewood had a PFAS hit. Right now, they're currently under the 10, but above the 2. I think George, our assistant engineer, is hopeful that we're going to get grant funds for that.
Yeah, so we did get word from Congressman Michael Lawler's office that they were looking for earmarks from all the municipalities in his congressional district, which we are, and we did submit our application for that for Pinewood Knolls. I believe it was for 1.6 or 1.4 million for the connection to Hopewell North Water District. And he was only allowed to submit 10 applications. Ours was one of them. He received almost 100 applications. His district is northern Westchester, Rockland County, Dutchess County, only a few towns in Dutchess, and is that it? I think so. Large district, so he had multiple applications, but ours made it to going to the Appropriations Committee. So we're very hopeful.
So that's a story for Pinewood. The West Campus water improvement areas, as has been discussed, there's a lot of work going on, projects coming in, and an important thing that we need to resolve is water infrastructure and storage for fire protection down there. Once upon a time, it was just a single site for Global Foundries.
Yes.
Now that it's been sold and subdivided and new entities are coming in, we need to provide, separate water supply and fire storage for those separate entities. Because Global and now ON Semiconductor, doesn't want to be in the business of selling water. I know we're seeking some earmarks and grants for that work as well, and some developer contributions, so
Yeah,
that's ongoing.
That earmark came about by Megan Glander, which is the chief of staff for Senator Chuck Schumer's Mid-Hudson district, and that came about after I was discussing with her and several others about the potential of the the East Campus, us expanding over there and us needing to do improvements for the new town district, and we submitted a $5.5 million application for an earmark. So we're very, very hopeful that that'll get approved as well.
Lastly, as far as water works, we are under preliminary review looking at the possibility to run water from the hamlet/county down the railroad track bed to the Stormville area. It's, very preliminary. There's, a lot of moving parts to this. But, if we could accomplish that, and that would only be accomplished if the Montage Summit Woods projects move forward and they've expressed an interest in this, that might be, a long-term solution ultimately for Four Corners to solve their irrigation problem. But there's a lot of moving parts to that. One study that has to be done is the age of the water. By the time it comes from Poughkeepsie, gets to here, and then gets out to Stormville and sits in the tank, that's a concern we have. There's definitely the water, it's just a question of how old it might be by the time and how we might be able to manage it, so there's a lot of moving parts to that, but we are reviewing that. A sewer project at Sagamore, the DEC came in with new limits in terms of our discharge for disinfection, the chlorine, and, another kind of unfunded mandate, so to speak, but they want us to reduce our disinfection limit. So they had proposed ultraviolet, and we had priced that at around $350,000, and there's only, I think, 117 homes at Sagamore. We shopped around with a couple different consultants, one of which came up with a different type of technology, and we think that we have that down to about 85 grand right now.
Excellent.
And it looks like the DEC is going to accept that, so I think we dodged a bullet at Sagamore with that.
Oh, that's
so,
great.
Yeah. And then circling back to actually little road projects, I know the highway superintendent's not here, but one of the Bridge New York solicitations for projects, HVA met with the highway department, and I think they identified 3 culverts. Dutchess County submitted 7 culverts in total. We had 3 of the 7.
Wow.
So HVA is, I think they're kind of optimistic that we'll at least get 1 of those culverts, if not more. So we'll see how that goes. I myself did not visit it. It was highway, and HVA went out to those culverts.
Very busy.
Very busy, very busy. And it's just skimming the details, so yeah.
Yeah, I said give a little overview, and there's a lot to do. It's our planning and engineering department is very, very busy, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for all the work.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions for the engineer about any of them? And if any residents
Don't take
have
any days off.
I took my days off.
He took his vacation, then he's good for the year. Any comments or questions that any residents have, please feel free to call my office as usual, and we will get you the answers. So, thank you all. Thank you to the controller, to the engineer, and the attorney. We have, that's it for tonight. I do want to just make one comment because it is before our next town board meeting. We have this posted online and on our Channel 22 and our website. Arbor Day celebration and the blessing of the bikes. It's April 22nd, and that is at right at the Junction Loop, which is right at the Hopewell Depot, right by the start of the rail trail. It's from 10 to 12. They're going to be doing tree planting, different activities, giveaways right at the Depot Museum. And then at 12 o'clock, if you're there with your bicycles, we're going to be having a blessings of the bike. So please come. We have this posted. It's going to be a nice event for Arbor Day, and be nice for everybody to come out. So our next town board meeting is on April 27th at 6 o'clock, and I hope everybody has a good day. Thank you.